The camera phone shook as Karen Mitchell's hysterical laughter echoed through the restaurant. "Did you see his face?" she gasped, zooming in on the teenage server crumpled on the floor, his uniform soaked in scalding coffee. But Karma was already drafting legal papers with her name on them, and the boy she destroyed for entertainment had a Karen. Mitchell adjusted her designer sunglasses and surveyed the crowded patio of Millbrook's most exclusive brunch spot like a queen surveying her kingdom. The morning sun caught the diamonds on her wedding ring, hefty 3-carat, reminder of her husband's pharmaceutical fortune and her own unassailable position in their affluent suburbs' social hierarchy. "Excuse me, ma'am," the voice belonged to a gangly teenager with sandy hair and earnest brown eyes, nervously gripping a coffee pot. His name tag read Martu Straney. Karen didn't look up from her phone, where she was orchestrating the morning's social media campaign for the Children's Hospital charity gallon event that would cement her reputation as the town's premier philanthropist. "What?" she snapped, her manicured finger hovering over the post button. "I'm so sorry, but we're actually out of the Ethiopian single origin you ordered. Would you like me to recommend? Are you kidding me?" Karen's voice cut through the ambient chatter like a blade. Several nearby diners turned to stare. "Do you have any idea who I am? I specifically requested that coffee when I made this reservation. This is completely unacceptable." Marcus's face flushed red. "I understand your frustration, ma'am. I can speak to my manager. Your manager. You think your manager can magically produce coffee beans that don't exist?" Karen stood up, her chair scraping against the stone patio. "This is exactly what's wrong with your generation. No accountability, no problem-solving skills, just excuses." The teenager's hands trembled slightly as he set down the coffee pot. "I really am sorry. We have a Colombian blend that's very similar." "Similar?" Karen's voice rose another octave. "Do you think I'm some suburban housewife who can't tell the difference between coffee beans? I have a refined palate, unlike some people who probably think Folgers is gourmet." Marcus took a step back, his face now pale. I'll go get my manager right away. Don't you dare walk away from me when I'm talking to you." Karen grabbed his arm as he turned, her grip surprisingly strong. "You need to learn that actions have consequences. You can't just disappoint people and walk away. Please let go." "Of me?" Marcus whispered, glancing around at the dozen other patrons, now openly staring at the scene. Karen's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. She'd found her audience. "Oh, now you're embarrassed. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to ruin my morning." She pulled out her phone, switching to video mode. "You know what? Let's make this a teaching moment." "What are you doing?" Marcus tried to pull away, but Karen's grip tightened. "I'm documenting incompetence," she announced to the patio. "This is what happens when participation trophy culture meets the real world. Everyone needs to see this." The red record button glowed as Karen held the phone up. "So tell everyone your name again, sweetheart." I don't want to be filmed," Marcus stammered. "Too bad. When you work in customer service, you represent the establishment. Say your name for the camera." Marcus looked around desperately, but his manager was nowhere to be seen. The other servers were busy with their own tables, pretending not to notice. "Please, I just started working here. I need this job." "Then you should have thought about that before you decided to be incompetent." "Name now, Marcus," he whispered, louder. "I can't hear you over the sound of your failure, Marcus Chen," he said, his voice breaking slightly. Karen smiled triumphantly. "Perfect. Now, Marcus Chen, explain to everyone why you think it's acceptable to disappoint paying customers." The teenager's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mean to disappoint anyone. We really are out of that coffee. I can't make it appear. Excuses. Excuses." Karen circled him slowly, phone still recording. "You know what your problem is, Marcus? You don't understand consequences. You've probably got participation trophies your whole life, right? Never had to actually work for anything?" Marcus shook his head, but Karen wasn't interested in his response. "Well, here's a real-world lesson for you," she continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "When you disappoint someone, there are consequences. And thanks to social media, those consequences can follow you everywhere." She zoomed in on his face, capturing every detail of his humiliation. "Look at that, everyone. That's what failure looks like. Remember this face." Marcus tried to cover his face with his hands, but Karen grabbed his wrist. "Oh no, don't hide now. You made your choice when you decided to be incompetent. I need to get back to work, Marcus said, his voice barely audible. Work? You call this work? You're a disappointment to your employer, your family, and yourself. Karen's voice grew more theatrical as she noticed other diners starting to record with their own phones. This is exactly what's wrong with society today. No accountability, no consequences, just entitled kids who think the world owes them something. Marcus pulled away from her grip and stumbled backward, his hip catching the edge of a serving cart. The cart wobbled, and a full pot of coffee, the Colombian blend he'd offered as an alternative, toppled over, sending scalding liquid cascading onto the stone patio, and onto Marcus. The teenager screamed as the hot coffee soaked through his uniform, his face contorting in agony. He fell to his knees, clutching at his chest where the liquid had made contact. For a moment, the patio fell silent except for Marcus's gasping sobs. Then Karen started laughing. "Oh my God," she wheezed. "Still recording. Did you see that? He literally just proved my point. This is exactly what I'm talking about. No coordination, no grace under pressure. This is hilarious." She moved closer, angling for a better shot of Marcus writhing on the ground. Are you getting this, everyone? This is what happens when you hire incompetent people. They literally can't handle the pressure. Someone called 911. A woman at a nearby table shouted, "911? For what?" Karen scoffed. "It's just coffee. He'll be fine. Won't you, Marcus? This is just another learning experience for you." Marcus looked up at her, tears streaming down his face, his uniform still steaming. "Why?" he whispered. "Why are you doing this to me?" Erin's smile faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered. "Because someone needs to teach you that actions have consequences. This is the real world, sweetheart. Welcome to it." She ended the recording and immediately opened her social media apps. "This is going to go viral," she muttered to herself, her fingers flying across the screen. "Everyone needs to see this. Hashtag real-world lessons number participation profit generation. Hashtag customer service within minutes." The video was uploaded to TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Karen tagged the restaurant, added inflammatory captions, and settled back to watch the chaos unfold. The first comments came in immediately. "Oh my God, this is hilarious. Finally, someone telling it like it is. That kid needs to learn some life lessons." Karen basked in the validation, responding to comments and sharing the video to every group chat she belonged to. She was so engrossed in her phone that she barely noticed when the paramedics arrived, or when they carefully helped Marcus to his feet and began examining his burns. "Ma'am, we're going to need to take him to the hospital," one of the EMTs said. To Karen, assuming she was responsible for the injured employee, "Hospital." Karen looked up from her phone, where the view count was climbing rapidly. "For what? It's just coffee. He has second-degree burns on his chest and arms. This is serious." Karen shrugged. "Well, maybe next time he'll be more careful. Actions have consequences, right?" The EMT stared at her for a moment, then shook his head and turned back to Marcus. "Let's get you to the ambulance, son." As they wheeled Marcus away, Karen noticed he was looking directly at her. There was something in his expression, not just pain or humiliation, but something else, something that made her stomach twist uncomfortably. But the feeling passed quickly as her phone buzzed with another 100 notifications. The video was exploding across platforms. 3 million views and counting. The comments were pouring in, a mix of support and outrage that only fed the viral fire. Karen had never felt more powerful. She stayed at the restaurant for another hour, basking in her newfound internet fame and fielding calls from local news stations wanting to interview her. She was already planning her media strategy. This could be the launching pad for the lifestyle brand she'd been dreaming about. It wasn't until she got home that she noticed the envelope wedged in her front door, heavy cream-colored paper with her name written in precise legal script. Her hands shook slightly as she tore it open. Summons and complaint, the header read in bold black letters. Karen's blood ran cold as she scanned the document. Legal jargon swam before her eyes, but certain phrases jumped out with crystal clarity: assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation, punitive damages. At the bottom, in the same precise script, was a signature she didn't recognize, followed by a law firm she'd never heard of. But it was the nom. Karen forced herself to her feet, smoothing down her designer blouse and attempting to regain some composure. The summons crinkled under her heel as she stepped toward the door, her mind racing through possible explanations. A server, a process. Server, maybe even a journalist. She could handle any of them. She was Karen Mitchell. She owned this town. The man on her doorstep wore an expensive suit and carried a leather briefcase. His silver hair was immaculately styled, and his steel-gray eyes held the predatory gleam of someone who'd built a career on other people's mistakes. Mrs. Mitchell. I'm David Chen, attorney at law. He extended a business card with surgical precision. I believe you've already received our initial correspondence regarding my client. Karen's blood turned to ice. Chen, the same last name as your client, she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus Chen, my nephew. David's smile was thin and razor-sharp. May I come in? We have quite a bit to discuss. Karen's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. She'd assumed Marcus was just another entitled teenager with no resources, no connections, no power. The kind of person she could crush without consequence. The kind of person who disappeared into the service industry machinery, forgotten and replaceable. She'd never imagined he had an uncle who could afford a suit that cost more than most people's. Karzai, I don't think that's necessary, Karen stammered, trying to close the door. I haven't done anything wrong. David's foot shot out, blocking the door with casual efficiency. Oh, but I think you have. In fact, I think you've done quite a lot wrong. And thanks to your own documentation, I have all the evidence I need. He pulled out his phone and played the video. Karen's video with the sound turned up loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. Her own voice echoed across the marble foyer. This is what happens when you hire incompetent people. They literally can't handle the pressure. Interesting perspective, David said, pausing the video on Marcus's face contorted in agony. Especially considering my nephew is currently in the burn unit at Presbyterian Hospital. Second and third degree burns covering 15% of his body, Karen felt the walls closing in. That was an accident. He bumped into the cart himself. After you physically restrained him, humiliated him in front of dozens of witnesses, and deliberately created a hostile environment that led to his injury. David's voice was clinical, precise. We have 17 different camera angles of the incident. Mrs. Mitchell, your own video was just the beginning. He stepped into her foyer uninvited, his eyes taking in the expensive artwork, the crystal chandelier, the marble floors. Nice place. Your husband's pharmaceutical company must be doing well. What's the current market cap? 2 billion? 3. Karen's mouth went dry. What do you want? Justice. Accountability. The things you kept lecturing my nephew about. David set his briefcase on her antique console table without permission. You see, Marcus isn't just some kid, as you so eloquently put it. He's a 17-year-old honor student who's been working 3 jobs to pay for his cancer treatments. The words hit Karen like physical blows. Cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma. Diagnosed 8 months ago. David's voice grew colder with each word. His parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. So he's been living with his grandmother while I handled the legal arrangements. The restaurant job was his latest attempt to cover the medical bills that insurance won't touch. Karen sank into one of her designer chairs, her legs no longer capable of supporting her. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You didn't bother to know anything about him, except that he was a convenient target for your entertainment. David opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick manila folder. But I know quite a bit about you, Mrs. Mitchell. Amazing what a private investigator can uncover in just a few hours. He spread photographs across her coffee table like a dealer laying out cards. Your husband's company, Mitchell Pharmaceuticals, currently under investigation by the FDA for price fixing on cancer medications. Interesting timing, don't you think? Karen stared at the documents, her vision blurring. That's not public information. It will be. Along with these rather fascinating records of your charitable foundation's spending habits. David produced another set of papers. Turns out, 90% of the money donated to your children's hospital charity gala goes to administrative expenses. Funny how those expenses include your spa treatments, shopping trips, and vacation homes. You can't prove I can prove everything. Your own social media posts are a treasure trove of evidence. All those Instagram stories about your charity work while you're drinking champagne on your yacht, the IRS finds those particularly illuminating. Karen's phone buzzed incessantly on the table beside her. The notifications had become a constant stream of harassment, death threats, and doxing attempts. Her perfect digital life was imploding in real time. David picked up her phone and glanced at the screen. "Oh, look at that. Channel 7 News wants to interview you about your heroic stand against entitled youth culture. I'm sure they'll be fascinated to learn about Marcus's medical situation." "Please," Karen whispered. "I'll delete the video. I'll apologize. I'll pay for his medical bills. Delete the video." David laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Mrs. Mitchell, that video has been viewed 12 million times in the past 6 hours. It's been downloaded, remixed, and turned into memes. You can't delete what's already become part of the internet's permanent record." He leaned forward, his gray eyes boring into hers. "But let's talk about those medical bills. Marcus's treatment costs approximately $40,000 per month. He's been rationing his medications to make them last longer, working himself to exhaustion to afford each dose. Meanwhile, your husband's company charges $500 for pills that cost $12 to manufacture." Karen felt sick. "I don't control my husband's business decisions, no, but you benefit from them. Every designer handbag, every piece of jewelry, every champagne brunch is paid for with money extracted from people exactly like Marcus David's." His voice was deadly quiet. "People who choose between medication and rent, between treatment and food, between living and dying." The doorbell rang again, followed by the sound of multiple car doors slamming. Through the window, Karen could see news vans lining her street. Reporters with cameras and microphones were gathering on her lawn like vultures. "They found your address," David observed casually. "Social media is remarkably efficient at crowdsourcing information. I believe someone posted your property records." About an hour ago, Karen's phone rang. Her husband's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," David suggested. "He's probably calling from his office, where protesters are currently demanding his resignation. Something about blood money and cancer profiteering. The optics are rather unfortunate." With shaking hands, Karen answered the phone. Richard's voice exploded through the speaker before she could say hello. "Karen, what the hell have you done?" "I've got reporters calling every board member, protesters outside the building, and the FDA is moving up their investigation timeline. Our stock price has dropped 30% since your video went viral. Richard, do you have any idea what you've done to us, to the company, to our family?" His voice was shaking with rage. "I'm getting calls from investors threatening to pull out. The board is talking about forcing me to resign. 20 years of building this company, and you destroyed it in one morning because you couldn't handle a coffee shortage." The line went dead. David had been listening to every word, his expression unchanged. "Rough day at the office, I assume?" Karen stared at the phone in her hand, watching as text messages from friends and family members flooded in. Each one was a variation of the same theme: shock, disgust, and distance. Her social circle was abandoning her with the same ruthless efficiency they'd once used to exclude others. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "I want you to understand what you've done. To really understand." David stood up and walked to her window, where reporters were setting up for live broadcasts. "That young man you humiliated and injured, he's been the sole caretaker for his 80-year-old grandmother since his parents died. He's maintained a 4.0 GPA while working 3 jobs and undergoing chemotherapy. He's never missed a day of school, never complained about his circumstances, never asked for special treatment." Karen felt tears burning her eyes. "I didn't know. And he's never hurt anyone, never posted cruel videos online, never used his power to destroy someone weaker than himself. He's everything you pretend to be when you post about your charity work." David turned back to her, his face impassive. The difference is, his compassion is real. A knock at the door interrupted them. Through the glass, Karen could see a uniformed police officer. "That'll be the criminal complaint," David said matter-of-factly. "Assault and battery, harassment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The district attorney is quite interested in making an example of you." Karen's world was collapsing faster than she could process. Criminal charges? Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? You assaulted a minor, filmed it, and distributed it to millions of people. In some jurisdictions, that's considered child abuse. David packed his papers back into his briefcase with methodical precision. 3 weeks later, Karen sat in the sterile conference room of Davidson, Walsh and Associates, her hands folded in her lap like a penitent child. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by a simple black dress and minimal jewelry. Her lawyer, James Davidson, shuffled through papers with the weary expression of a man who'd seen too many lost causes. "The prosecution is offering a plea deal," Davidson said without looking up. "Guilty plea to assault and battery, 2 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and a $50,000 fine." Karen's laugh was bitter. "50,000. That's nothing. It would have been nothing 3 weeks ago." Now Davidson finally met her eyes. "Karen, your assets have been frozen pending the IRS investigation. Your husband's company is hemorrhaging money. The board forced him to resign yesterday. You're lucky you can afford my retainer." The words hit her like physical blows. Richard hadn't spoken to her since the day of her arrest. He'd moved into his downtown apartment, claiming he needed space to deal with the crisis. But Karen knew the truth. He was distancing himself from the toxic wreckage of her reputation. "What about the civil suit?" she asked. Davidson's expression grew grimmer. "David Chen is seeking punitive damages in the amount of $10 million. He's also filed a separate suit against Mitchell Pharmaceuticals for price fixing, using your video as evidence of the family's callous disregard for cancer patients." Karen's head spun. "How can my video be evidence of price fixing? Because you filmed yourself mocking a cancer patient who couldn't afford proper treatment while married to the man who sets those prices." Davidson leaned back in his chair. "It's a prosecutor's dream, Karen. You literally provided them with a smoking gun." Through the conference room window, Karen could see protesters gathered outside the building. They'd been there every day since news broke about Marcus's condition. Signs reading "Justice for Marcus" and "Millionaire Bullies Cancer Kids" had become a permanent fixture of her life. "How is he?" Karen asked quietly. "Marcus. His treatment has been delayed because of the injuries from the coffee burns. The infection risk from the burns means he can't undergo chemotherapy for at least another month." Davidson's voice was clinical. "His doctors say the delay could significantly impact his prognosis." Karen felt sick. "I didn't mean for him to get hurt. But you did mean to humiliate him. You did mean to make him suffer. The physical injuries were just an unfortunate bonus." Davidson gathered his papers. "The prosecution will argue that your actions were deliberately calculated to cause maximum harm to a vulnerable minor." A knock at the door interrupted them. Davidson's assistant entered, her face pale. "Mr. Davidson, you need to see this." She handed him a tablet, and Karen watched her lawyer's face drain of color as he read. "What is it?" "Channel 7 just ran an investigative piece called The Real." Marcus Chen Davidson turned the tablet toward her. They interviewed his teachers, his grandmother, his coworkers. They found out about his parents' death, his medical bills, his academic achievements. They even got footage of him volunteering at the animal shelter between his shifts at the restaurant. Karen stared at the screen, watching interview after interview with people who described Marcus as kind, hardworking, and selfless. His high school principal called him the most resilient young man I've ever met. His grandmother, a tiny woman with silver hair and Marcus's same earnest eyes, spoke through tears about how he'd never complained about his circumstances. He always said he was lucky, the grandmother said, her voice breaking. Lucky to have people who cared about him, lucky to have a chance to get better. Even when he was sick from the treatments, even when he was working until midnight to pay for his medicine, he said he was lucky. The piece ended with footage of Marcus from before his diagnosis, healthy, smiling, helping his grandmother in her garden. The contrast with his current condition was devastating. "This has been viewed 18 million times in the past 4 hours, Davidson said. "The public sentiment has shifted from outrage to something much more dangerous." "What, do you mean they don't just hate you anymore, Karen? They see you as evil?" As someone who takes pleasure in destroying innocence, Davidson closed the tablet. 3 death threats were called into my office this morning. Your home address has been posted on every major social media platform. The FBI is recommending witness protection. Karen's world lurched. Witness protection. The Marcus Chen story has become a national phenomenon. People are calling it a symbol of everything wrong with American society: wealth, inequality, healthcare costs, the destruction of empathy. Davidson's voice was grim. You've become the face of privileged cruelty in the social media age." The door opened again, and Davidson's assistant returned with a grim expression. "Sir, Marcus Chen's lawyer is here. He says it's urgent." David Chen entered the room with the same predatory confidence he'd shown at Karen's house, but there was something different in his eyes, something that made Karen's blood run cold. "Mrs. Mitchell, Mr. Davidson," he set his briefcase on the table with deliberate precision. "I'm here to discuss a development in my nephew's case." "What kind of development?" Davidson asked, warily. "Marcus's condition has taken a turn for the worse. The infection from his burns has spread, and his weakened immune system from the cancer treatments can't fight it off. His doctors are concerned about sepsis." David's voice was emotionless, but Karen could see the fury burning behind his eyes. "They're not sure he's going to make it." The words hit Karen like a physical blow. "What?" "If Marcus dies, Mrs. Mitchell, you'll be facing homicide charges, felony murder at minimum, possibly second-degree murder, given the premeditation evidenced in your video." David opened his briefcase and withdrew a document. "I wanted you to understand the stakes before I filed." This, he slid the paper across the table. Karen saw the header with growing horror. "Motion to amend charges. Attempted murder. Attempted murder." Davidson's voice cracked. "You can't be serious." "Deadly serious." Mrs. Mitchell's actions directly led to Marcus's current condition. She physically restrained him, created a hostile environment that led to his injury, and then prevented him from receiving immediate medical attention by dismissing his injuries as trivial. David's voice was cold as steel. A reasonable person would know that scalding coffee could cause serious harm to someone with a compromised immune system. Karen stared at the document, the words blurring together. "I didn't know he had cancer, but you knew he was injured. You knew he was in pain, and you laughed." David leaned forward, his gray eyes boring into hers. "You chose to prioritize your entertainment over his well-being. That's not ignorance, Mrs. Mitchell. That's malice." Davidson was frantically taking notes. "This is absurd. You can't prove intent to kill. I can prove intent to harm. The video evidence is unambiguous. Your client deliberately caused physical and emotional trauma to a vulnerable minor. The fact that the harm was more severe than anticipated doesn't absolve her of responsibility." David's smile was razor-thin. "Marcus's medical records show his condition was stable before the incident. The timeline of his deterioration directly correlates with the injuries he sustained." Karen felt the room spinning around her. "How long does he have?" "The doctors won't say. Could be days, could be weeks. But every day he spends fighting infection is a day he's not fighting cancer." David stood up, his presence filling the room. "I wanted you to know what you've done, to really understand the magnitude of your actions." "What do you want from me?" Karen whispered. "I want you to feel what Marcus felt in that moment when you were laughing at his pain. I want you to understand what it's like to be helpless, to be at the mercy of someone who sees your suffering as entertainment." David's voice grew softer, more dangerous. "I want you to lie awake at night, knowing that a 70-year-old boy might die because you needed content for your social media." Davidson cleared his throat. "If you're here to negotiate, I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to give Mrs. Mitchell a choice." David pulled out his phone and showed them a video security footage from the hospital, showing Marcus unconscious in his bed, surrounded by machines. "This is what he looks like right now. This is what your client's viral video has led to." Karen couldn't look away from the screen. Marcus looked so young, so fragile, buried under tubes and wires. His grandmother sat beside his bed, holding his hand and whispering prayers. "Here's your choice, Mrs. Mitchell." David continued. "You can fight this in court, where the jury will see this footage alongside your laughing video. You can try to explain to 12 of your peers why you thought it was funny to watch a cancer patient suffer, or ... Or what?" Karen asked. "Or you can do something decent for the first time in your life. You can take responsibility for what you've done. You can stand up in front of the cameras and tell the world that you were wrong, that you hurt an innocent boy, and that you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to make amends." Karen stared at him. "You want me to confess? I want you to be human, just once." David's voice was almost gentle. "Marcus doesn't have much time left, Mrs. Mitchell, but he's still fighting, still hoping, still believing that people are fundamentally good, even after what you did to him." He gathered